too, or visit heartdrop.com or find us on Amazon.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Well, it's time to stumble down the road with host Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff and co-host Jenny Vaught as they carry stones, dig holes, and wield their shovels along the way. On Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. This is not a seated event. As they talk, run, stumble, carry, dig, drag, laugh, fight, sing, and pray, dance and kick and scream, and oftentimes fall. Hey, is that a stone or a buffalo chick? Now, here are your hosts for the next 2 hours on carrying stones and digging holes. But I won't be there.
The hell I won't.
Hey everybody, it's Bridgette Lyn. Hey everybody, it's Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff. There we go.
Hello?
Hey, hi Bill. Hey, this is Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff, your host for the next 2 hours of Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And you can go to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and you can find all kinds of different ways that you can support us. There is a funding page. We have heirloom seeds. You can do some advertising on the main website. You can just, if you want to just throw 10, 15 bucks at us, you can do that as well. Also, while you're there, if you go to the schedule bar, click on the schedule, hit the schedule bar, and then click on Studio A. I'm in Studio A at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So anyway, click on Studio A, scroll down Studio A till you find me at the Saturday 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then you'll see a big bee with pollen on its legs and flying towards a flower. Click on that, and there's some bio information about myself and contact information if you want to contact me. Anyway, so today I'm having another guest coming back, revisit another guest, and we haven't really decided what we were going to talk about. But this is my friend, BillyDale, and he, in the past, has been a common law U.S. Marshal. He also is retired from being a common law judge. And he also has all kinds of interesting, amazing things about him in his history. But I forced him to come on today just to have like kind of a fun show and just talk about things and shoot the SHIT for 2 hours. All right, Bill, are you there?
I'm here.
All right. So did you think about anything that we should start talking about today, or like you have any hints or anything that you thought might be people should talk about, or that they should know, or that we should talk about, or anything that's exciting?
I've been thinking about everything, but it's hard to come up with new topics all the time.
Right.
So we'll probably discuss some of the old topics, but one thing we can talk about is my son, who was recently attacked by debt collectors trying to collect $32,000 from him. We can talk about these debt collectors a little bit, who and what they are.
Awesome. Go right ahead. Explain, because, sometimes we have listeners that, we don't really understand, a lot of stuff. So make sure you add in information so that gives them kind of a base ground level of what debt is, and those kinds of ideas while you tell the story. But go ahead, run with it.
Well, I don't know where to begin except at the beginning. I think about 15 years ago, my son had purchased 2 properties. He spent most of his own money buying the properties and took out a second loan to finish in order to remodel the homes. That second loan was for about $32,000, but the loan was not to be paid back in monthly installments. It's a one-time pay in full at the end of the contract, which is the year 2020. Now, for some reason, about 2 months ago, and I'm not going to mention the name of the debt collector company because they're all the same. Doesn't matter which one. And they came in with an offer to contract, even though you wouldn't know that they had made an offer to contract. What they did, they came in and they're demanding money on this loan. And they want Bill to start making payments, which is not a good idea. If you're ever attacked by these loan collectors, is the main thing that you got to do is write on their paperwork, I refused this offer to contract, and basically send it back to them, because if you make any payments or you don't respond within 30 days to one of their remarks, they're an automatic winner, and you're going to be facing some court time. Now, in the event that my son brought this paperwork to me from this debt collecting agency, I went ahead and set up a contract, because what they were trying to do is contract with him. We refused that. We set up our own contract, sent everything back to him, and I also asked for a copy of the contract between the debt collector and my son. Have I lost you?
No, I'm here. I'm listening.
Okay. So anyway, we responded within the legal limits of 30 days, sent them a contract. In the contract, it also told them how they could enter the contract or not enter into the contract. It's very plain English, simple contract. And the first thing those dummies do is they jumped right on it and sent me a contract between the original bank and my son, but they never did send me a contract that I asked for, which was a contract between them and my son. They did not supply that after I asked for it. So what they did do is they re-asked for some money again. We want your money, start making these payments, so we have the right to take you to court. Well, no, they don't, because I already refused their contract, for number one. So number two, what I got to do now is enforce the contract that we wrote. They've already, by sending me nothing to prove that they have no contract with my son whatsoever, so they can't proceed with anything, basically. However, we went ahead and made up an invoice based on the penalties of our contract that they could step into, costing them hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it was all laid out in black and white. And these fools jumped right into it. So we sent them an invoice for $300,000. We also, at the same time, set up a trust for my son, defining the all capital letter name and him, as they are not one and the same, and there's never been a contract with my son whatsoever on any of these contracts. And so since then, I think that was 5 weeks ago, I sent off the invoice. I sent them a second copy of our contract in case they lost the first one. I sent them a copy of the trust and how this, and explained to them how this whole system's going to work. And the way it's going to work is, if you want to take me to court, remember this: you have no contract walking into that court. So how can you win? You can't. But when I go in that court with you, I'll have a contract in my hand with evidence that you jumped right into the contract with both feet. And guess who's going to win the court hearing? I will. However, this thing is not going to court. They haven't responded to my last remarks, which was over 5 weeks ago, nor have they tried to pay the invoice, nor do I expect them ever to try to pay the invoice, nor do I expect them to ever try to take us to court, because they're going to lose big time. Way back in 1995, I had some friends that were being double charged on their credit cards, and then they refused to pay them because they refused to correct the mistakes. So eventually the credit card company went out and hired these debt collectors, here we go again, to go in and try to get some money from them. And I beat those debt collectors back then using the same method I just beat this one for my son. Because what I basically did back then is I sent the contract between you and my client. I want to see it. They never sent it, but they did send another invitation to come to court if you didn't want to, if you accepted the contract. So we refused that one. And then I wrote them a letter. I didn't send them a trust. I didn't try to separate their names, the all capital letter names from the small ones back then. All I did is I sent them a letter upon their second reply. And all that letter said, is this your feeble attempt to gain jurisdiction over my client because he is refusing your contract? And that's about all I said. I sent the letter off to them, and I never heard from them people again. Because what they're doing, when they send you these pieces of paper saying they'd like you to pay on them, is they want you to enter in this contract. If you make one single payment on these contracts, you are then stuck with it. So I would advise anyone and everyone who are being hounded by these type of people is to refuse their contract, send it back to them within the 30 days so you don't go into dishonor. If you go into dishonor, you just lost. And just challenge their jurisdiction to come after you absent a contract. Where's the contract?
Yeah, so hold on.
They don't have one.
Okay, so just for listeners out there. Okay, so say you have an AT&T, you have a contract with AT&T to have a cell phone, right? And you decide that you can't pay that bill, or something happens and AT&T aggravates you, and you aren't able to pay the bill or whatever. The moment that AT&T sends your bill to a debt collector or law firm to collect the debt or whatever else.
Yeah.
What Bill is saying is that when that debt collector sends you that invoice and that threat to pay, that debt collector, you don't have a relationship with them. And AT&T did not have any right to give your contract, your personal information, your personal data, your personal whatever else that you're in contract with AT&T with. We're just using AT&T hypothetically. AT&T didn't have any right to do that, to sell off your debt to a debt collector. So when that debt collector starts calling you or contacting you in behalf of that debt, they are trying to get you into a new contract with them to bypass your contract with AT&T. And that is, and they do it kind of in a non-direct way, so you don't really know what's going on. So the first time that the debt collector contacts you by writing, "I do not consent" across the paperwork with the big black marker or whatever else and sending it back, "I do not consent to your contract," is letting them know that you are saying, look, I'm not going to be party to this, that, AT&T has gone behind my back, sold my whatever to you, and that now you're trying to get me in contract to sue me or whatever else for this debt. So you can say, look, I'm not going to consent to the contract, because whatever they're sending you in the mail is getting you not to, comply in 30 days with something to be sent back. And if you don't comply within 30 days after receiving the documents for the debt from the debt collector, then they've won, right? And they can take you to court. They can lien whatever property or whatever else that you may have, or garnish your wages to get that money. But if you start the process by saying, I write on their document as soon as they send it, like, I do not consent to your contract, then that shuts them down from being able to collect that debt because you are not willing to get into contract with them. And a lot of this legal stuff is non-disclosed. You know, they get you involved in contracting with them by you ignoring the situation, which they know most likely that you are going to do. And this is how they move in and be able to take, you know, custody of that debt. And you, by you not saying anything to them, that voluntarily tells them that you are guilty. And then because you're not sending anything back. And so that's the way that the courts see it. And then they can go through the process of liening or garnishing or doing whatever they want to you. So
yeah, there's two ways you enter into their contract. One, you wait 30 days, you don't do nothing, you're in their contract. Or two, if you make a payment. Those are the two ways they capture you.
Yeah. And so the thing is yeah, so the debt collector has no business getting in between you and the original person that you were, or company that you were in contract with. So
basically speaking, no, they don't.
Right. So the thing is like, just so people know out there, anything that you do or sign gets you into contract. So you want a new phone, you go there, almost always they're going to have you sign something.
Yeah.
And so you get a new phone, you get a new computer, you've got to get the service turned on. Cable is getting you into contract. And one of the things that I, you know, realized is like, eventually I want to buy land, right? And so Bill and I, you know, I was kind of involved in kind of like these concepts for a long time until 2009 when, you know, I start getting radically attacked by the state for my private practice. And that's kind of like where I met Bill. And since that point in time, you know, it's helped me kind of go down the rabbit hole into everything. This is why I don't get credit. This is why I won't get a loan. This is why I won't get any of this stuff. I don't do any kind of licensing refusal because I'm not signing onto a contract with somebody else, right? So that they can be. The scary part about this is that you go get, say, a cell phone and this, so I didn't have anything under your capitalized name as a corporation. Once you get into contract with any type of debt or licensing or whatever else that you're going to sign for, once you get into contract with them, then what they do, every single contract, doesn't matter what it is, whatever you sign, they pull a bond note on you and a life insurance policy, and they put this into an account that is, you know, on the stock market. It's usually in a hedge fund. And then they actually give you each bond or each contract that you get, they give you a different kind of number, which is hard to track to find it. And it's all under what's called a QSIP number. And that's your, you know, main QSIP number. Sometimes you have numerous QSIP numbers that they're pulling bonds and life insurance policies on. And this is how ridiculous it is. You could have $100 a month bill with AT&T, and I'm just using AT&T. And you could, you know, have a phone and have the service and everything else for $100 a month, and you're in contract with them. And they pull a bond on you, and they also pull a life insurance policy on you behind closed doors. Because, you know, you're a capitalized corporation coming in to do business with them, so that they have to, you know, in their little world, they have to, like, you know, make sure that they can get paid on your liability. So your debt is already paid. They get double paid. They get paid from their claim to your corporation name. So if you default on that debt, or, you know, the monthly debt, they get paid on it. And then on top of it, you pay them. So they double dip on how this whole thing works. So for like years and years and years, I don't know, 15 years or whatever, I did not get in contract with anyone or anything. I, you know, paid my way. refused to sign anything, refused to like, get involved with a lot of this kind of contract. And then I decided to, I don't know when it was, I got my tablet, and then I had it on AT&T in, I don't know exactly when that was exactly, but I went back in last June. Bill and I were doing some work, with the federal trusts through the Federal Reserve, our trusts that are held, by the government. They're the trustee on our trust because we're in capitalized name. So doing work on that. And so I went in and I looked up my QSIB number, my information on myself, and lo and behold, I was in a $34 million hedge fund. And I tracked it all the way through to a law firm that was the trustee on that hedge fund, all the way in Cayman Islands. The hedge fund was like in the US from some crazy like gas and oil company thing, but the attorneys were in the Cayman Island who oversaw. So I got into that hedge fund, I got all the information, and I started sending that law firm, not that I didn't hear back from them, but I let them know that I knew. And so what it boiled down to was it was that one contract that I had done in 15 years. There had been no other bonds pulled on me or life insurance policies for 15 years because I wasn't in contract with anybody. And that one day that I went in there, got a tablet, got in contract with AT&T, boom, they pulled a bond on me and a life insurance policy, and I was on a hedge fund, in a hedge fund, hidden in a hedge fund, and my bond was being, used as financial leverage for the wealthy and the elite to make money off of. So I learned last June that the simplest contracts, the simplest thing that you do is going to get you bought and sold. So my life, I've tried to really try not to get credit, not to sign contracts, so that even though I can't figure out how to get my bonds back from them, and I haven't really figured out how to lien them or force them to stop doing what they're doing, by me not getting in contract with anyone, which means no credit, no loans, no nothing, pay cash for whatever I need. And if I have to get in contract, then I just decide that I don't need it. I'm not going to go there. And that's kind of like how I stop them from doing that kind of financial fraud. Let's just say committing financial fraud on me behind closed doors, and me being used as a tool or a weapon for people to get wealthy. I recently heard Kin, who's been on the show before, he was telling me that people are finding out on their QSIPs when they apply for food stamps and they're getting like a measly, $50 a month, that there's that the bonds that are being pulled on that, and it equates to $40,000 a month payment to the government. They give you $50 and then they're making $40,000 off that food stamp contract.
Yeah, they're creating money out of thin air again.
Yeah, no, they're off your back. Out of thin air and off your back.
And off your back, but that'd be then they're going to have to take it from the thin air because my back is worn out.
Yeah, well, that's it, right? After a while, you just don't get in contract at all, right?
Yeah.
So what else do you have to talk about?
Well, that story's not over yet. It's been 6 weeks. They haven't replied. I don't expect them ever to try to collect this money. But I don't know if they ever made a contract with the loan company to try to collect some money, or if they purchased that particular loan, say like 10 cents on the dollar. I don't know which one of those two they did. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to assume they purchased it at about 10 cents on the dollar. And since they can't do business with me through my son, the only choice they have to do, or their only choice, is to try to find another collection agency and take this paperwork and sell it to them so they could try to recoup their 10% they spent buying money, so buying that contract up. And then I'll expect this second debt collection company to start all over again, and then I'll have to start all over again. I'll refuse their contracts, send them contracts, and we're going to do it all over again, and then they'll get screwed. However, strange things are going on. Like I told you, on this particular loan, it's not even due until the year 2020, so why are they trying to collect? Do they think something is going to change in this world that might cancel out that debt, such as a reset of all the monies in the world? Is that what they're afraid of? Is that why they're trying to collect early, which they have no right to do? Is that what you think might be going on here?
I don't know. I mean, I think that I think there's a lot of issues that are going on. I mean, above and beyond the reset, but I think also that they have, banks have borrowed so far out that they have zero liquidity either. So they have no cash. They can't loan any more money because they have to keep a certain amount of cash in the bank or assets. And this is kind of an interesting story. I had a business partner who was murdered by the Bushes. They wanted his company. They entertained him at, Junior's inaugural ball, both elections. When they found out that he was my business partner and one of my business mentors, amazing, brilliant man. He even was being visited by, extraterrestrials that looked human, to try to keep him on the path that he was going. Because I'm sure that, it was a really tough path. But he had gotten himself into a situation where he was having to do business with insurance companies because insurance companies had a bulk of storage units across the United States because the insurance people could only write insurance policies based on assets that they held. And I don't know what it's like now. I'm sure it could be completely different. But they actually had to hold physical assets. And so one of the things that was happening was that the government was blocking him from selling his dory bars from his mines. Mind you, he was buying mines all over Arizona and Nevada that had tailings that were leftover, bulk material of, heavy metals, precious metals, but were small and were mixed up in huge amounts of really toxic waste. So he wasn't actually doing new mining on land. He realized, like in these tailings, that he could buy these mines relatively cheap. Well, once he started, kind of moving down this process, he was blocked by the state, he was blocked by the U.S. government, he was blocked, he had to fight, major court battles and whatever else. Well, one of the places that he found out that he could start selling some of his dory bars and stuff like that were into insurance companies because precious metals were same as cash. So they could actually buy a lot of this stuff from him and store it in storage sheds and use it as assets to write in order to write the initial insurance policies. Doesn't matter if it's medical or car or home or whatever it's going to be, whatever you need it for. They had to have, solid assets and things that were appraised but didn't have a fair market value could only be used at like 80%. So artwork, even though it would have appraisal and it's sitting in some storage shed, they could only use 80% of its value to write the initial insurance policies. So that's kind of like how I found out about that. Was that the insurance companies also, kind of needed assets to, initially write. I'm sure it's kind of different now, because once they write the policy, then they can pull a bond. Then it turns into a whole other, aspect, kind of a situation. So if the bank, so you put your deposits in there, people don't have any money anymore. I mean, people are barely writing their bank accounts and barely, keeping them open. So there's no big cash in there. And about 3 months ago, I was listening to this guy who was talking about how the banks had no liquidity. And if you had a certain amount of money in them and you wanted the cash, you wanted the money out, that they couldn't even transfer it ones and zeros to other banks because they didn't even have it in their accounting. So they had spent, so this one guy was talking about how he had $20 million, like in this one bank. And mind you, it's supposed to be FDIC, it's supposed to be all this other stuff. And he went in to get it because, he wanted to buy some properties. And the bank said, well, no, we're going to have to talk to the bank staff or, the bank president or whatever else and all this other stuff. And they refused to give him, any money out of his account. And eventually what happened was over 6 months, basically the head president overseeing all the local branches of the banks actually called him, and they put together a contract to pay him over 10 years, monthly payments on his $20 million. And it would start in like a year, because there was no way, any way, shape, or form that they were going to give him the money, even though they wouldn't disclose to the guy's attorneys, like, why they wouldn't pay. But it all boiled down to that there was no liquidity in the bank. So they had spent all his money and couldn't even give it back to him, and couldn't even exchange it into another bank account through ones and zeros, because the other bank wouldn't have accepted it the way that it was, because they had spent it. And so a lot of people are finding that they're going to their banks, and the money that they thought that they had in there, they can't get it out, and there's no cash. So the banks don't have, talking about probably, what's going on is like, they want this loan paid, by your son, years early, because they have zero absolutely liquidity. And they need to try to attempt to get whatever they can back into the bank, because they're about ready to close their doors. There's no way that they can actually stay open. So now they have to start selling, to debtors and whoever else they can, all this debt. But the problem is that you can't, there's only so long. So what is it? 1974 is when our money was removed from silver. I'm not really sure, because, I know that our initial money was backed by silver, unlike most countries. And then, but people say that it was removed from the gold standard in 1974. So I'm a little bit confused about that. But up until like the 1974, same as Canada, 1977, their money was removed from asset back as well. And so once that happened, what they started doing is then we had a debt-based economy. So all of our money that is being made or printed or moved out into our economies is based on debt, not based on assets. So there's only so long before that whole thing can, totally explode. But this is the other, Bill, this is the other thing I think we've talked about, but that I talk about all the time, is in other countries. So other countries are going to revalue their currencies with asset backed on their country. We don't. America doesn't really have assets. They say that we're running out of natural gas. We've cut down all of the timber that we can possibly cut down. The only timber really left is in some of the, national parks, right? Protected areas. This is why, we were going into other countries stealing their stuff. I think we were stealing, when we went to war with Iraq, we were literally stealing 30% of their oil, and we didn't pay for it. So Americans, we wonder why our gas is so cheap here. Well, it's because it's stolen. I mean, that's the bottom line. But so when these other countries reassess, they're going over their books, they're getting their gold back from other countries who've taken it or said, let's hold it. We'll hold it for you. And they're getting their assets back, and they're revaluating their assets to get rid of their fiat, and then coming out with a new, asset-backed currency that'll be like 100% digital. And anybody can go online right now. You want facts? Go see what Zimbabwe is doing. They just came out with their digital asset-backed currency, and it's getting ready to go up on the Forex and start trading. So, boom, there it is. So now you have all these countries who, because of the involvement of the UK and some of these criminal people, you could call them whatever you want, deep state cabal, doesn't matter, that and the US's involvement, now the US is kind of moving into the position to pay the price for the crimes that have been committed. So that this is the bottom line why I think the U.S. hasn't gotten a currency yet that has asset backing, because there's a big problem. The big problem is called public debt. And right now it looks like the massive federal deficit, even though we're told it's like 25 trillion or whatever else, well, they printed another $21 trillion that they spent doing blackmail and all kinds of stuff behind the scene. So now we're at what is that, $45 trillion. And then the gold, they decided, the US government or whoever was involved in it decided to write bonds on 750 tons of gold. So now that gold that's supposed to back our currency has a debt against it. So we're looking at, maybe $65, trillion just in federal debt, right? And then on top of it, we're the only country in the world that's public debt. You can't get the kind of debt that we have in other countries. I mean, the millennials, you see them out and about, they're couples, they're having children. They also usually have, anywhere from $30,000 to $70,000 vehicles, two of them. They've got boats that have a 15-year, mortgage on them, which they're paying monthly on. They've got like an RV or a pool trailer. I mean, this is kind of like the new American dream. Well, none of them are making enough money, just to barely pay their mortgage, their boat payment, their 2 car payments, and their, pool trailer RV payments and whatever else. And other countries just don't have that kind of debt. So me personally, when I'm looking at all this kind of stuff, this is why the U.S. is in serious trouble, and they're having a hard time trying to figure out what to do with the U.S. because I'm not really sure that they can do a debt jubilee or whatever on all that kind of debt in the U.S., the public debt, because it's not fair to other countries. The other countries are not getting their public debt wiped out because they don't have public debt.
Yeah, that's going to be a problem.
And so then you've got, it's 4 times, they say that on average, the public debt is 4 times as big as the federal debt. So we're looking at 200,000 or $200 trillion in public debt. Recently, I was reading that 80% of all the car loans right now have not been paid in 3 months to the banks. So 80% of the people in the U.S. are extended out and have not made payments on their cars for 3 months. It's something like 85. I can't remember if it's I can't remember if it was $8 million or $8 billion just in car loan debt.
Yeah, so, that's a lot. The same thing's starting to happen with people's homes. The amount of foreclosures it's just been skyrocketing. I think it's up to something like 22,000 homes every month that are going into foreclosure. It's just people can't afford anything anymore.
Yeah, but this is the deal. This is like, it's one thing to get rid of the, the federal central bank debt, right? The deficit. And it's a whole other thing to get rid of people's public debt, because you know what? People say, well, they were duped into it. Well, no, you signed a document agreeing to pay for it.
Yep.
Now, when it becomes like a criminal move is when they decide to come after you for the loan early, like, in your son's case, or they don't even notify him about the debt and they sell it to somebody else, which wasn't a discussion that your son had with his bank. They circumvented him, right, and sold it without even asking him or talking to him. Now that becomes a criminal, event.
Yeah, and it's crazy. The other thing too is I was reading the loan, and when I found out it wasn't even due till next year, that put me on alert that something's happening. And the other thing is that on the loan papers itself is that, the loan is in the trust name, all capital letters. And of course, the trustee then comes in and signs that note that he's taken out a loan, right? Because the money isn't given to him directly in his upper and lowercase name. It's given to the trust, the all capital letter name, when they take out a loan. Or you don't get it at all. It just bypasses you and goes on to another collector. So what I've noticed on this paperwork of his is that there was no bank representative that had authorized the loan in the first place. It's an incomplete contract is what it is, because there's only one signature on there, and that's the signature of my son, and there's no such thing as a lopsided contract, and there's also no such thing as being able to contract with yourself. In other words, the bank didn't want to put their signature on this contract because they're not really loaning him any money. It's a fraud. They loaned him nothing. They loaned him his own credit, and then now they want to take back and make money off of something they never had in the first place.
Well, and they've also been paid on it because they pulled, once they gave him the loan or his credit, his own credit or whatever, they, pulled a bond on it for, to make sure that his corporation would pay for it. Because if you're a regular human in upper and lowercase name, you don't have to pull a bond out, to get a loan. But only if you're a corporation company business do you have to bond. You have to get yourself bonded. Your company has to be bonded to do business.
Yeah, because you're going to be doing business in the admiralty, and you're going to have to be bonded to cover the mistakes you're going to make.
Right, as a business, not as a person.
Business. Yeah, as a business, yeah.
So when he was signed it as a business, right, in his corporation name, they would have taken out a bond on that, and then his bond that they were pulling this on and taking out a life insurance policy as he was a business, he was getting a business loan basically, right, or business credit as a capitalized name, then they already got paid on his stuff. Or will be paid in 2020.
But again, this contract he signed is worthless.
Yeah, totally.
Their company never had a representative signing that contract that they wanted to agree to give him this money. They never agreed to it. They forgot to sign the darn contract. It's lopsided. There's no one there to represent their company in this business deal. Do you understand what I just said?
No, but I mean, that's how
There's
blatant
no one in their business that can represent this loan because they failed to enter into the contract.
Right. So basically they're at fault. If, somebody has
fault.
big
They
enough
forgot to sign.
kahoonies to go in and explain that to them.
Yeah. Well, it's right here too. Let's see here. The Supreme Court upheld that the state is not a real person and cannot sign a contract, therefore cannot be a claimant as a victim. This also applies to corporations and banks, the same rule. Okay?
So
They're not real persons.
Right.
They're not real persons. They can't sign a contract. That's why they never did sign my son's contract. However, if they wanted a business deal between his trust and their corporation, they still have to have a representative signature saying, yeah, we're entering into this agreement. And we still don't have that as of today.
Okay, so how does that play out when people go in to, say, get a business license or a massage license? It's a one-party contract because you're the only one signing their paperwork. You know,
Exactly.
You never see anybody sign behind you or after you. They just go, okay, sign here, take your money. We'll send you a, business license in the mail in such and such time.
Well, they're not going to sign it because what they're doing is illegal.
Right.
They don't want their name on it.
Yeah.
That's why the banks don't sign it on this contract my son has. They didn't want to sign it because they didn't loan him any money. They didn't have any money to begin with. It was a fraud. They don't want their name on it.
Right. Right.
So, yeah.
Well, anyway, it's just so ridiculous, when you wake up, and there's so many places in our world, in our life, that we really need to wake up because they're committing fraud, or we've been also involved in allowing ourselves to be, included in committing that fraud because we use our signature, right?
Yeah.
And so, once you start waking up to this stuff, you can't unsee it. And I remember, I told the story before when Bill's on, but it's just such a good story.
Yeah.
Bill has a friend of his that they were all involved in a common law group in the state, and so his friend would help do, when we were doing corporate souls and stuff like that. Bill's friend would help us do the corporation, like a limited liability corporation to go along with your corp soul and all this other stuff, and help you set it up with IRS and get the numbers and all this other stuff. And so I remember after I got my IRS numbers for my different accounts, the IRS sent me this letter, and I read it, and to me, it basically said that I needed to contact them within 30 days, blah, 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 blah. And so I thought that they were kind of revoking my tax ID numbers or what. I didn't really know what it was saying because I was looking at it through the persona of being a capitalized name and how I've been trained to operate in the world, right? With powerless and no rights and just succumbing to every authority, that's presented at me. And so all this is always kind of a threat, which would catch me off guard, and my mind wouldn't be able to evaluate it properly in the beginning. And I remember I took it in to this restaurant. His wife owned kind of a coffee shop restaurant, and he was there having coffee, and he said, well, bring the, IRS documents and let me have a look at them. So I brought him in, and he explained to me that what they were saying is that they don't really want to have anything to do with me in a good way. And what they were saying is that I had 30 days in which to get in contract with them. Because of the previous documents that I've submitted with the IRS, I was not in contract with them. I just wanted a tax ID number. And the way that we sent them in and everything else to get those tax ID numbers for my companies. And so I wasn't in contract with them, and they were trying to get me into contract. So they told me that I had 30 days to comply and to, blah, 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 be in communications with them and whatever else. But basically what it was saying, because I didn't understand the legal terminology that they were writing, was that, here's your numbers. We gave you your numbers. We don't really need to be in contact with you anymore. So, please don't bother us. However, if you do wish to be in contact with us in compliancy, then contact us within 30 days. And so I didn't understand what they wanted me to be compliant of. They didn't really speculate that. So at one point, because I didn't understand what it was saying, and I was arguing with Bill's friend in the coffee shop because I didn't understand. It was coming from like, regular definition, mentality. And so finally his friend stood up and said really loud, the coffee shop was full because he had to stop me with my programming, and he yelled at me and he said, "Do you want to go to jail?" And I stepped back and everybody looked, and I was like, "No, I don't want to go to jail." He goes, "Then listen to what I'm telling you." He said, they don't have a contract with you, but they've given you these taxpayer ID numbers because of the way we handle ourselves with them. And he said, so what they're telling you is that in order to get in contract, they want you to get into contract with them. So they want you to fill out this paperwork, and then that way they'll be in contract with you, and then they can shut your bank accounts down, or they can threaten you, or they can do anything that they want to do. And he said, so we don't want to be in contract with them, so we are never going to contact them again. and I said, oh, okay. And so after that, I started to be able to read what they're sending you. I got Black Laws Dictionary and sat down. And so I would thoroughly read through any kind of documents that came to me to try to figure out what they were really saying to me and what the bottom line was. And then that way I could either act or I could not act. So that's kind of like when I first started learning about, like Bill was saying, he was reading this loan document because, if you're ever going to, stand up for yourself or do not consent, and then you're going to start asking them questions or whatever else, or be a little defiant about them trying to get you into contract, you always have to go back and read the original documents thoroughly, right? In order to know what you're kind of defending against, right? Or what their presumption that they're standing on is, and then how to correspond with that presumption.
Exactly. Entrapment, I call it. So,
that's exactly what it is. Yep, that's exactly. Yeah. It's collusion, entrapment.
Yeah.
Because they're colluding with a lot of other agencies. I mean, the government's involved. Whoever's getting a contract to you is involved with government agents who are helping them to pull a bond off your trust, your capitalized name. I mean, so they're all in collusion, and
exactly.
through the process of entrapment.
My computer quit working. I got it back now. Okay.
All right. What else do you want to talk about?
Well, I had something on my mind now. I forgot.
You got that sometime.
I'm going to talk about this loan again because it really puzzles me why they have to come in through a debt collector a year before it's even due. But then again, I'm not worried about it. But like I said, the bank never signed the contract, so they're not involved anymore. It's a lopsided contract. It can't be collected on anyway. So.
So we have 3 minutes, and then we're going to go to commercial for 4 minutes, and then we come back for all the listeners and for Bill.
Yeah, that sounds fine. Maybe I'll read some of the stuff here that tells you exactly who and what those people are.
Okay. Are you there?
Yeah. When we come back, we'll start this, right?
Yeah. Well, when we come back, we'll start that. So anyway, you're listening to Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show. So I might as well just blurb on here before we go into commercial or promos. And I'm on my show is on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. This is the first hour of the Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show. You can go to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and you can look at, click on schedule, and then you can go down to Schedule A, click on that, go down to where the B is, the picture of that. You can click on that, and there's some bio information and contact information there about me and the show. And also while you're there, check out the funding page and see if there's any way that you can help fund us, because we are listener supported and all of us volunteer our time to be behind the scenes helping people to do radio, and also all of us that do the radio shows. And we also have some people that help us to do those radio shows. So all of us volunteer our time 100% to bring you conversations and shows that we think are important individually and what we think matters. So also, you can go to, I always forget to tell people to go to my YouTube channel. So I'm Consciousness of Economics and Urban Farm Project YouTube channel. And you can go there, and I put up all kinds of interesting and disturbing information, I think, to some people. But I put up all kinds of information, and I do my own videos and add new content to my playlist. All right, we'll be back. 4 minutes. Thank you.
freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Hello, all you good-looking people out there in Revolution Radio. This is Mario. I invite you to join me Thursdays at 6 o'clock for This, That, and the Other. It's a show about you, it's a show about me, but ultimately it's a show where we try to have a little bit of fun. We discuss important topics, and we do our best to be apolitical. So I invite you, put on your favorite pair of comfy sweats, your smoking jacket, and grab a beverage of your choice, and join me Thursday evenings at 6 o'clock for This, That, and the Other on Revolution Radio.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
From the astral realms to the physical plane, the halls of power to the walls of home, the multiverse to the innerverse, all will be haunted by the ghost in the machine. I am Steve Zerloff, the ghost in the machine. Mondays, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Studio B, exclusively here on Revolution.Radio.
February is Heart Month. Every year for the month of February, to show our appreciation to Extendivite's faithful customers, we have a sale. If you would like to try Extendivite, now is the time to get a few months ahead and really give Extendivite the time to show you how it works. Most of Extendivite's long-term customers wait for this sale to stock up. People and doctors tell us about the unbelievable improvements that they have experienced in their overall health, not just the heart. Extendivite wants you to experience the power of these herbs. Get a 4-month supply for only $115 for either the capsules or tincture. Please take advantage of this once-per-year sale and get healthy for life. To order, call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com or find us on Amazon.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
The opinions expressed on this radio station, its programs, and its website by the hosts, guests, and call-in listeners or chatters are solely the opinions of the original source who expressed them. They do not necessarily represent the opinions of Revolution Radio and FreedomSlips.com, its staff, or affiliates. You're listening to Revolution Radio, FreedomSlips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Hey everybody, this is Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff, and we are in the second hour of Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show. And my guest today is BillyDale, and we are talking about all kinds of different stuff: debt, loans, QSIP numbers, hedge funds, banks, all kinds of interesting things, or at least we think they're interesting. Anyway, at the end of the last hour, he had some stuff that he wanted to read to us. So, Bill, are you there?
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to let him go ahead and finish his thought.
Well, there's not much to read here. What I'm going to do is basically outline who all of these politicians are, who the judges are, who the prosecutors are, and who the cops are, the police. And these guys, each and every one of them, are not U.S. citizens, nor are they state nationals. They have no home. They have no country. They don't belong here. Each and every one of those judges, politicians, and all these people, they all need to have a green card in order to run around our country. Did you know that?
No, because they're foreign agents.
Oh, yeah. They're foreign agents, and it's right here in their own act, and this is what I'm going to read to you. There's two different parts of it here, but it's real short. But it says under Foreign Relations and Intercourse, which is Title 22, United States Code, Chapter 11, it identifies all public officials as foreign agents. Real short, real simple, huh? Foreign agents. And it comes down also in the same act under Title 22, under the International Organization Immunities Act of 1945. It says Title 22, relinquish every public office of the United States to the United Nations. That's their home. That's why they have to have a green card to come here. This is the point I wanted to make out. You understand how it works? They're not citizens. They got to have green cards or some kind of passport to walk around this country. Are you there? Did I lose you?
Yeah, no. So
Oh.
I was trying to put that into a simple form. So basically anybody that is elected or posted or
anyone who wants to work for the corporation,
right? But that would be that. But that would
citizenship, and they automatically are UN employees.
Right. So that would be people that wanted to or work for the government, right, or the state.
Yeah. You lose your civil rights as a citizen because you've been given away. You don't belong to this country anymore.
So would that apply? I'm just going to pick your brain for our listeners, okay? So the presumption, so this is also something I've learned, is that in court you win, or by legal documents, hopefully you never go to court, but it's always based on the presumption. Law is not really, especially when you're dealing with admiralty law, copyright, or, corporate law, a lot of those different kinds of laws. The presumption wins. The person that has the best, presumption or argument, usually wins. So the presumption would be that means that cops, law enforcement, attorneys, right? Because the bar isn't the bar, it's a UN fiction, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
And so the sheriff that took an oath to protect the Constitution, he was taking basically to the UN. He was like doing an oath to the UN to do their bidding and their work. So so I guess if you were licensed with, say, even a stockbroker firm, right? Because they would be regulated. If you got a license to be a stockbroker through the federal government, there's some probably kind of international contract that you have to be involved with, because you're going to be selling and buying stock for clients worldwide. So that would be also, they would be a foreign agent as well, right? Once they were licensed, because it would fall under belonging to the UN, the presumption anyway.
It'd be a presumption, couldn't be broken very easily, but.
So it's kind of a general, it's a big generalization. So a lot of people could fit under what you just read. That was brief and general.
Yeah, very brief. They're not citizens here. They have no business. This is why everything they do inside their own enclave. They can't go, like if you got a home that's being repossessed and they're going to sell it, they sell it on the courthouse steps within their domain, so they can't be prosecuted. They have absolute immunity there. This is why they don't go to the home and sell it at the home itself, because that's outside of their jurisdiction. They would be criminals. So everything is done within their domain, within the courthouse, in order to satisfy their own law and their own jurisdiction, which means their authority to do what they're doing. So I don't know where I want to go from here. I'm hoping people understand that these people are yanking your chain, man. They're nobody. They don't have a right to take you to the court. The only reason you go to court is because you're scared to death and you don't know how to defend yourself, and you don't know the difference between an all capital letter name and an upper and lower case. So 99% of the people are going to go in those places and lose every time. I don't intend to. But
well, that's why you never want to deal with whatever you have, like right out the gate, instead of ending up in court. Because court is where, it's
a battlefield.
You don't want to go into their jurisdiction and board their ship. Because
don't really want.
Once you're on the high seas, you're screwed.
Yeah. That's where you're at. You're in their territory, and you got to play by their rules best that you can.
Yeah, because the captain, it's not a captain. It's not a judge, it's a captain. And it's exactly. On Admiralty International Law, the law of the sea, which is, also the UN is involved in that.
Exactly.
And so once you board their ship, you're boarded their ship and you're at sea. That's why, pirates could steal people, say they didn't have enough crew. I was reading this article about, 5 years ago, about how there was all these underground tunnels and stuff like that, like in Seattle, kind of in the maritime area, and that literally ships would come in and, say everyone on board got sick and they didn't make it, and they needed half a crew to get, the corporation's goods, to the next place. And they would get them drunk or drug them in these, bars, these like pirate bars or whatever. And then a lot of these seamen would say that they just woke up in the ship, and they would get rid of their bodies through drop holes in the bars and stuff like that, through the tunnels, and then they'd get them on the ship. And by the time they woke up, they were already on the ship. There was nothing they could do.
Exactly.
And then they were slaves of that ship. and had to work and learn how to work and, fix the boat or whatever else. And were not really let off the ship. It was like they'd port, they'd deliver the goods for the, powers that be or whatever else. And then they would set sail again, and that's kind of like where we're at in the U.S. and other countries, is we're just a giant ship at sea. We're, being sailed around. We're on somebody's ship and they're trying to navigate it. But the truth is that they only have ships at different places, like, the courthouses, right? That's where they have jurisdiction. So those are their ships. And what they're saying is those ships are in the sea, the water already. So once you aboard that ship, they can do whatever they want to you on that ship. If they want you to pay a fine, that's why they have these work programs. We'll let you work your fine off, because that's what they would have done on a ship. You work your right to live off on this ship, like physical labor, just because we say so. Otherwise, you're going to walk the plank, and we're going to throw you into the drink, and then you're going to be dead. And then, so that means we're going to kill you for your debt, right? And your refusal to do what we want. I mean, that's kind of like what it boils down to. So you never want to go where their jurisdictions are. So, Bill, tell us where some of their jurisdictions are. I mean, other than the courthouse, where these jurisdictions could be.
Yeah, and you know what the jurisdiction is, because every ship flies its own flag. That flag determines jurisdiction.
Oh yeah, and so it has it has that gold. It has that gold
braid.
Yeah, and it has that gold
that
top.
Gold braid means Admiralty military.
Right.
And so they advertise who they are. And if you don't want to go in there, you need to make some arrangements with yourself to pull yourself out from underneath their jurisdiction, so that you don't have to go into their battlefields and lose. So.
Yeah. So where would those jurisdictions be? So, I mean, okay, blatant one would be courthouses. I guess other blatant ones would be state places where you would get licensed, or
they all fly the same flag. The police fly the same flag. They're all in the Admiralty. They have to fly those things. I remember the days. I remember the days when the cops had the words "to protect and serve" on the side of their cop cars, and they had to take them all off, because they are not there to protect or serve anyone. They're there to represent that corporation and to make money for it.
Yeah. So tell me, you're so good with this story. I mean, this is kind of how blatant it is, but you tell the story about the flashing emergency lights. I mean, they never used to have those on their cars before, because they were to protect and serve. And then, so can you explain to listeners that whole thing about the lights and how they're only supposed to be used for emergencies or whatever else, and how they use them now, to kind of have authority? And you had like this really good story about it, about how
the minute they turn those lights on, you're under arrest. It's called custodial arrest. And so you want to pull over, be nice.
Right. So the thing is that right. So, but the lights originally came into being because they were for emergency purposes only. And now they use them as threat and domination.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing. Yeah. And it's just crazy. It's like the further you go down the rabbit hole, like the more insanity it is, right? So like, no wonder we're all stressed out and we all have post-traumatic stress disorder, because we're getting it from every corner of our lives. No wonder people want to hide in their house and not leave anymore. They don't even want to have a car or a license to drive a car. I just don't want to have to deal with any of it.
I'm getting that way myself.
Yeah. You've always been kind of a hermit. So
yeah, I like it.
Yeah, you're a natural hermit. Okay, so what else do you want to talk to us about? What else you got on there? The back burner, the front.
Let's see what this is. Oh, Internal Revenue Codes. There's they just put out I think it was Q. Didn't Q put out the thing that under House Resolution 25, they're disbanding the Internal Revenue Service?
No, I didn't see that. What does that mean? Tell us what that means.
Oh, you didn't see that? Well,
no, I didn't.
Okay.
Or how do you understand it?
I don't have it in front of me to read, but it goes in and it basically disbands the Internal Revenue Service and several other offices that work within the Treasury because they're not going to be needed anymore. They're all that corporate. They're into that corporate stuff, and Trump's changing all of that. So if you really get down into this, now this is information that came to me all the way back from 1939. Okay. And we know that the courts won't take anything post 1938 to bring those subject matters into their court, because you can't. They only accept decisions after 1938. You understand that? Most people don't.
Right. Yeah, because that's when.
So if you want to use any decisions or anything, you go to court. What you have to do is use any court case you want after 1938 to go into their courts. But that's not true in the common law. In the common law, they all stand all the way back to day one. But we're talking about United States number 2. And back in 1939, on February 10th, House Resolution 2762, Public Law number 1, Chapter 2, at Section 4, says the following, and it says, all such laws and parts of laws codified herein, to the extent they relate exclusively to the Internal Revenue Service, are repealed. Okay? Did you understand what they just said here? In 1939, they killed all the IRS laws. They had to. They had no choice. It was a violation of your 4th Amendment, your 5th Amendment, and the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. So I imagine the Supreme Court came down on Congress really hard to get that done before they got sued. If you go into their codes, which is USC Title 26, which has never been published, so it's not law. People have to understand that Title 26 is not law. It's just codes that guide the corporation. And it comes in here and it says the mission of the Internal Revenue Service is to maintain the highest level of voluntary compliance. Now, this is in the first page of their own book of the Internal Revenue Laws, which came out and said right there in the first book, you don't even have to read the rest of that crap in Title 26. They already said it's voluntary. Don't volunteer anymore. Get out of it. You know, the word tax protester, have you noticed that they don't use that anymore?
No, I haven't.
You heard? Mm-hmm. Yeah, you won't hear it anymore. You don't hear the news people talking about these guys who are going to tax court as protesters because that's illegal. The United States Senate told the Internal Revenue Service they can't use the words tax protester at all anymore, and that they would be punished if they did, because there's no way that you can protest a voluntary system. Why would you want to? Just don't volunteer. That's what the Senate said. If it's a voluntary system, they don't have to volunteer. And then so the Senate went on here, and it says right in their own paperwork, it says, you shall no longer use the term tax protester, and from here on out, you shall have only filers and non-filers. Now, this was the Senate telling the IRS to get your act straightened out. Okay? So the people right now who are not filing, and if the IRS is coming after them, you could sure hold them off. I'm going to tell you right now that they have no power to do anything. The other thing is the IRS isn't an American company of any kind. It's a Puerto Rican company. That's where their home office is. And all these people going into the IRS to get a banking number, to do banking in America, why in the world would you have to go to Puerto Rico to get a number to bank in America? I don't use their numbers. I've got accounts that I make up my own numbers with, and I tell the bank to open them up because I said I won't deal with the Internal Revenue Service because I don't have to. I have a right to not associate with those people. And the banks never argue with me on that point. But It's quite written here in the law, and I'm going to read that to you because there's two Supreme Court cases that simply says that freedom of association plainly supports the ability of freedom to not associate. Okay, that's a Supreme Court case that says you don't have to associate with them. You can go under that one law alone and kick their butt. Say, get away from me. I don't want you people in Puerto Rico to be messing with my bank account here in America. So you have rights, and these, the ones I'm talking to you about here, the Supreme Court decisions are after 1938, so they stand in any court. This one here was done in 1984. The other one, Good versus the Students of Washington, theirs was done in 1975, that says the main thrust of the defendant's position is that they have a constitutionally protected right not to associate with the group of their choice. Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah, so I was just thinking about something. All right, something just kind of, you know, like every once in a while something will come together and you'll be like, oh my God, no. Okay, so we know that there, you know, a lot of people see a lot of things on YouTube, and you see these people that get pulled into these, like, you know, U.S. checkpoints or whatever else. And the question is, or, you know, like if you go across, like Nevada and California has a, you know, it was called the fruit fly border, because, you know, California had to close all of its borders because it had a fruit fly and it was killing all their agriculture. So they had to put up, you know, border security. So when you go through these checkpoints, they'll sometimes, not so much anymore because I think they get so confronted, or they'll tell you, or you're going through like a DUI checkpoint or something, and they'll ask you, you know, can we see your ID, or are you a United States citizen? You know, kind of a thing. And in the, you know, videos, you'll see people fire back, you know, using different language at them, that they're not going to show them, you know, their ID because, you know, they have to be proven guilty first, right? And they don't, as a free citizen, they don't have to comply. So, but the checkpoints kind of like force this onto people. And so I just really realized that, well, we know that you never want to admit to being a United States citizen, because that is proof, verbal proof that you are owned, you're a corporation. And then in that checkpoint, what happens next is that they then they tell your corporation, once they know if you're a person or a corporation, or if you're I don't know if sovereign's the right word, but once it's indicated to that and you're a corporation, then they'll have you go over so that they can, you know, start to extort money from your corporation, you know, by accusing you of a crime. You know, it always comes with some kind of money, or, you know, like you go to jail and there's free labor, or they confiscate, you know, the corporation's belongings, i.e. a car. So I was just thinking about how, you know, they need to either see your driver's license, which has your corporation on it, which proves to them that you are a corporate entity. And once they identify that you're a corporation entity, then they can start the money extorting process, like the mafia or the mob, right? Give us $100. We'll pound your face in it until you give us $100 or whatever, or we'll just take your car, or you'll have to go do labor for us, right? The corporation. But if you indicate enough times that you're a person and you don't say what your place of citizenship is, right? Eventually they'll like let you go, because you keep proving to them over and over again that you're a upper and lower case human and not a corporation. And so they can't really, you know, go full barrels after you as a corporation during that, you know, to extort the money. So basically that's, I mean, like kind of in a nutshell, that's what's happening. It's like mafia, you know, the mafia trying to get money out of the corporation, beating the corporation up in so many different ways that they win, right? If you know, voluntarily.
Yeah, but got to keep that money flowing. into their pockets.
Yeah. No, they're just, So it's interesting, like you have to make it in your life. One thing I've learned about this is, you have to kind of make a decision about, if you're free or you're not, in your life. And you have to kind of like, it's not so much like defying or taking a stand. It's just that you get better at identifying yourself. For example, you get a ticket or you get a threat in the mail from somebody else about something they feel that you're doing. And they're trying to get you in contracts so that, they can like put you out of business or whatever else. And what it is, it's about you identifying yourself, because they don't know who you are really. They think that you're like everybody else and you're playing your corporation. And when they do this kind of stuff to you, what you do is you acknowledge to them, and then you educate them on, send them a legal letter or whatever else saying, you did, such and such and such on this date, blah, 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 blah. And I'm notifying you right now that I'm not that corporation. And I'm also going to notify you that if you continue, down this road of behavior towards me, then these are the kinds of actions that I'm going to take against you. So mostly in the beginning, when you're trying to deal with all of these different people and agencies and blah, 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 you're letting them know who you are. And then you give them the opportunity to see what they're going to do next. And then you can move forward. And so it's not something like, that a lot of times when these things happen to people, like the IRS start threatening them, or their bank is threatening them, or they're trying to repo their car, or, whatever is happening to people in their lives, that do not take that stuff personally, because they do it to everybody. And it doesn't have anything to do with you as a person. And sometimes if you feel under threat and you feel terrified and you feel scared and nervous and you feel like they have power over you or whatever else, that they're going to win, because you're not going to be able to ground yourself and balance yourself to, go to the task of reading everything, and educating yourself, so that you can create, like the proper response. And just to stand back and look at it all and not get overwhelmed by it, so that you can let them know, you can identify who you are, and then, give them a chance to decide if they want to participate with the real you or not. And
exactly.
not to be intimidated by
like
it.
Your trust paperwork, for instance, that trust paperwork separates you from who they think you really are. So
who they've made you into without your knowledge.
Exactly. Without their knowledge as well. But
yeah. I know. One thing I love about Bill is he doesn't really back down. And, he knows what he knows. He's been doing what he's been doing for a long, long time. And people come to his door and threaten him, and he lets them have it. And then they, for example, this is kind of an interesting thing. So Bill had a situation where the mail lady was psycho where he lived. And there were all these crazy rules and laws that, they couldn't go near the mail area in the building while the mail people were there. And that, all kinds of just crazy, crazy laws with the whole mail people thing. But anyway, he didn't know any of this. And so he went to go get his mail, and the mail person, she totally flipped out and accused Bill of hitting her arm with his, little mail door that he had to open in order to get his mail, and all hell broke loose. And he was being threatened that, the government postal service is going to come by and investigate this, and blah, 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 blah. And if just like all these kinds of threats. So she totally freaks out and goes totally psycho on him and whatever else. So he doesn't know really what's going to happen. And so I think it was like the same day.
It was the same day, only about an hour later.
Yeah, they sent the thugs, government postal service sent the thugs over to his condo.
They sent two of them over. And so I went outside. You stayed inside. And they asked me, "You Bill Wellesley?" And I said, "Sure." And they said, "We got a complaint." And they pulled out their badges and they started putting them away. And I said, "Let me see your badge again." And I looked at their badge and the other badge. "Oh, corporate employees." That's what I said to them, corporate employees. And their argument stopped. They looked at each other and they're going, "Uh-oh. This guy knows that we have no power. We're just corporate employees. They can't do anything to me." And so they were real nice after that. And that's when they said, "Well, Mr. Wellesley, just be nice around them and try not to move mailbox doors anymore because we don't really want to bother you." And I said, "That's fine. I'll be a nice guy from here on out." And then they left. So.
No, it always cracks me up because, all hell breaks loose and that's what I like most about Bill is that he has this certainty about what he knows is what he knows. And he's not going to back down under any kind of intimidation. And in the end, not that Bill wins, but, they decide that they don't want to have a relationship with him, like the IRS. The IRS actually, after 10 years of dealing with you, finally sent you a letter and said, "Don't ever contact us ever again. And we never want to be, we'll never contact you again."
Well, yeah, what I was doing is they were trying to steal money from me. They started an administrative hearing on me. An administrative hearing is generally done through the mail. It's done in 3 phases. Your first letter, you get 30 days to reply. Your second letter, you get 30 days to reply. Your third letter comes certified. You get 30 days to comply. After the end of that 30 days, if you don't settle the matter, they can come in and take what they want because they have a summary judgment on you at that time. So that's what they were trying to do. But I went and took protection under the Public Protection Clause of the Paperwork Reduction Act. And it says here in Section A, it says, "Notwithstanding any other provision of law," it says, "no person shall be subject to any penalty for failing to comply with a collection of information that is subject to this subchapter." Okay, so all that information they want to collect from you on those 1040s, that's your private Fourth Amendment property they're collecting. And so the government had to write a protection law to protect the people from the Internal Revenue Service. Even though it's a voluntary thing, they still come after you and still put you in prison. So the only thing you can do is take protection under the Paperwork Reduction Act, where they cannot come in. They cannot come after you with a bar, which is basically a debt collector. Or they can't come after you with an administrative hearing, which is a hearing through the mail, nor can they take you to court. This law protects everyone. You don't want to go to court, you don't want to pay taxes, take protection under the Paperwork Reduction Act. And you can look the act up on the internet. It's really a short act. It's the only act I've really, read in 5 minutes. It's so short and to the point. I love it. I'm going to sit and waste any time there. So everyone has protection. You just have to learn how to protect yourself.
Identify yourself. Once you figure out who you are, all you're doing is letting them know that you know. Yeah, all you're doing is identifying yourself to the IRS, saying, "Nope, this is who I am. And oh, by the way, I'm, my legal standing is, this. And if you continue to do this."
So my legal standing is also the Paperwork Reduction Act. And that says, as long as you guys got that OMB number up in the right-hand corner, and you don't put the word voluntary on the face of each and every one of these IRS papers, all 212 of them, if the word voluntary is not on the face of those pieces of papers, on those 1040s or whatever, then those are illegal forms. You do not have to fill them out because they're fraudulent. And when the IRS told me not to communicate with them anymore, they didn't want to hear from me anymore, that's because I gave them a FOIA, 3 of them in a row. I kept waiting 30 days. I want a 1040. Send me a 1040. They won't send me a 1040. I sent them another FOIA. Send me a 1040. They won't send me a 1040. Finally, they got mad and said, "Don't you ever communicate with us again. We're tired of listening to you." And they just won't bother me because they have no legal forms for me to fill out. What am I to do? What am I to do? I don't know.
That's funny. All right, so we're coming into the last 20 minutes or whatever of the show. So what else do you have? What else do you have to chat with us about?
Let's see. There's this other thing here. Now I got another thing here where same stuff we've been talking about. Let's go into the fact that there's 3 United States. Did we cover that very well?
I think sort of we touched base on it. I think it was towards the end of the conversation last time I had you on as well. So yeah, you might as well go into explaining that to people.
Well, I'm just going to read this decision here because it is public policy, so you can stand behind it anytime you want. But it says that the United States, it says this term has several meanings. It may merely be the name of a sovereign occupying the position of an analogical plane to that of other sovereign families of nations. That's United States number 1. United States number 2, it says it may designate the territory over which sovereignty of the United States extends. And United States number 3 says it may be the collective name of the states which are under and by the Constitution of the United States of America, a republic. So you have a republic, you have United States number 1, which is the name of a sovereign occupying a position. Well, the California Commercial Code defines United States number 1 under Section 9307, Section H, and it says the United States is located in the District of Columbia. Wow. Are you a U.S. citizen? If you say you are a U.S. citizen, then you have stated that you were born in the 10-mile square called the United States, and you are a U.S. citizen if you state that you were born there. Okay. Most people weren't born in the United States. They were born on the land. They were born in the United States number 3, in the Republic, on the land. All people were born on the land unless you just accidentally got born at sea. They don't count. Or if you actually got born in Washington, D.C. If you got born in Washington, D.C., you actually have no constitutional rights. You're a slave from day one if you were born there. But I suppose you can always expatriate, take up your papers and live outside of their jurisdiction in the United States number 3. Okay, let's go. United States number 1 is Washington, D.C. United States number 2 is a territory over which it tries to control or attempts to control. They do that in United States number 2, which is another United States, and there's 50 of them, and they call themselves a state of Nevada, state of Colorado, state of this, state of that. These are all United States number 2. They're all in the Admiralty, and they're all trying to tax you and control you. They all think that they're your particular parents or something. So we've got 3 different United States, one operating out of Washington, D.C. All the rest are operating in a territory overlaying our land called the Admiralty. They all work in the Admiralty. Hence their flag again. So again, it's just another division of who we are versus who they are.
Yeah, and I'd like to point out, because, how I really started to kind of understand this is how medicine works, like Western medicine. Because I kind of came in at that point because I was attacked for the type of medicine that I was doing. And that's kind of how I got started in all of it. And so I'm, anti-doctors and licensing of doctors, because this is where we come into that Admiralty law, is hospitals are ports of entry.
Ports of entry, yes.
And when the mother, who is a vessel, a corporation entity, she's a vessel, a ship, she comes into port, which means go to the hospital into port. And then the dock attendant registers all of the things that come out of the berth of a ship when it docks at port of that country.
It's considered to be chattel.
Yeah.
C-A. Yeah, that means property.
So what happens is that when the mother, who's the ship, goes into the port of entry, the hospital, where the dock attendant is, and you've been taught that he's a doctor, you're at sea, and then you give birth at sea. And then once they, give you a registration of the live birth contents out of the ship, which is the baby, and the dock attendant registers the birth with a birth certificate as a commodity coming out of a ship, then what happens is that when that document goes to the government, they register you as a vessel lost at sea. And then from that point on, you have a capitalized name that they use to control you, and they are the trustee over your trust. So the doctors can do whatever the heck that they want to you because you're at sea, you're on a ship, and there's nobody that's going to really listen to you. And so they register the life. And you know what? The last show I had Ken on, we were like, oh my God, came to the conclusion that the death certificate that also looks like a stock certificate actually is the trade of what's left of your body. Because basically your birth certificate would be your death certificate because they would change you into a vessel. And then your death certificate was really for them to make financial money off your physical body that you were leaving behind. So then we started to talk about, are the ashes we get from our loved ones really the ashes we get from our loved ones, or did they traffic the body? Because we asked for a birth certificate, a death certificate. We need a death certificate to clear out all of their stuff, right? So we have to show proof of the vessel.
Yeah, they got to clear everything out because you got to remember your vessel is being sold on Wall Street.
And they got to collect their money. Number. Yeah, they got to collect all their money.
Yeah, and there's between 10 and 25 birth certificates in every CUSIP number. But all that's being sold on Wall Street. But if you die, and that death certificate has to clear out that part of the CUSIP number. In other words, they got to clear that out of Wall Street, bring the money out to Magellan, who handles all of the monies on Wall Street. And then Magellan has to give this money to those who have claims upon it, which the United States has claims on some of that money. The Queen has claims on it, as well as the Pope.
The UN.
And so the death certificate is important so they can clear out all your money on Wall Street, pass it out to the crooks.
Yeah, themselves. Yeah, no, so that's kind of like how the whole doctor thing works. So, I think most doctors don't even know what they're involved in, but, the AMA, it seems like to me, American Medical Association kind of was built right on that concept that, obviously if the hospitals are kind of government run, they're under government authority. FDA is a government, right, under authority, licensing and all that other stuff. In order to create the dock attendant, they had to create like this fake thing called a doctor. That's why doctors don't get very good education. Like nutrition is not even part of their education. It's not even considered. They're told, don't even worry about it. It's not going to matter. It's not going to help your patients. So because so in this whole scam, people say, oh, you're so harsh on doctors. It's like, well, I was going down that road, and I decided that just wasn't going to be, I wasn't going to become non-human. I'm so glad I didn't go down that road. And to do the kind of medicine that I do. And so they get people by, getting them into deep financial debt. That's how they get, people to be doctors. Because I think once they're going through internship and they're getting, and then they get their license, there's a point where, they think about not doing it anymore. But by that time, they're like, $400,000 in debt. So it's like bribery, it's blackmail. And then they end up
Blackmail.
selling their soul, even though I don't even think they know really the deep legal end of, the whole, they're the brokers. They're the brokers of the commodities for the government. If the doctors, didn't register the births, which what they were designed for, then a lot of this couldn't go on. If doctors just stopped registering people's births, and this is how dumb people are. This is like, you have a home birth because you don't want to have your baby in a hospital, right? So you have a home birth, you get a midwife. What is the first damn thing that you do? You run down to the, registering dock attendants and register the birth.
On behalf of the dock attendants.
Yeah, you make their job easy so that they can traffic you as a corporation commodity and steal everything that ever belonged to you.
That's what happened to me. I was born in a little shack about 20 miles from Pineville, Missouri, where they had to go and turn my birth certificate in from the mother who delivered me, and then get my birth certificate out there being sold to all the nations in the world as a slave. But yeah, my mom and dad had to wait 3 whole days before they could get in and let anybody know I was even born. I kind of wish they would have just forgot about it, but they didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it shocks me how compliant we are and how it's hereditary compliancy. You know what I mean? Because it's been going on for so long. It's like we just are like in feedlots. We're like cows, in feedlots, being gate opens, we go through the buzzer, boo, we walk down the next alley. We stand in line to be processed in our feedlot. Oh, and you know what I really love? We were at Costco the other day, Bill and I, and so they check your receipt when you're coming out. And I had just listened to this guy on YouTube, so I was telling Bill about it, about how you go to Costco, you go into Costco, you pay them for their goods and their services, and it's a feedlot. I mean, look how it's all fenced out, how all the aisles are set up, how they move traffic through it. You're feeding on the different stuff in the different, allotted areas, putting stuff into your cart, just like a cow. And then they traffic you to the register, usually, but in a feedlot, if they get the cow to the end of the line to the register, usually it's a bullet in the head.
Yeah.
But we get to pay. We have to pay them, right, for their goods and services in their prison feedlot as we make our way through it. And then when you get to the door, they have, basically the mafia looking over your receipt to make sure that you didn't steal anything. And if you think that you're not in any kind of prison scenario or controlled scenario, just think about that. You pay these people to have a membership, to go in and purchase. So you pay extra, right, to have a relationship with this business, and annually, right, and to be able to go in there to buy goods and services or products or whatever. And then it's set up kind of like a feedlot, a cattle feedlot. I mean, it's really hard to get around there, and how it's controlled, and you're controlled while you're in there, doing your purchasing, putting it into your cart. And then the only way to get out is through the registers, right? And then you leave there and you go out and you're being stopped at the door because you have to prove, even though there's nowhere else you could have possibly gone to steal that stuff in that store. I mean, because it is set up like a prison. And then they're going to check everything on your, there's a legal term for that. It's called detaining. It's being detained.
Okay.
And that's a prison system, where you go in, they watch you, they control wherever you're going. There's fenced area, the part where you're contained in, You come out, and then you're detained once again before you can even get out the door. You mean there's nowhere that you can say, well, I don't consent, because if you don't consent, then you can't even go shopping there, right? Because it's one of those kinds of things. But yeah, so, I mean, what do you think about that, Bill? About, like that whole thing? It blows me away every time I think about it in that kind of a way.
Yeah, I know. Every time I go there and see what they do all the time, it just really kind of ticks me off, because it's like you said, you can't really steal anything on the way out. There's nothing to steal. So it's almost like they're checking their own people to see if they did their job, making sure they didn't give anything away at the register, perhaps. I don't know.
Or like, remember when they had all that Nazi stuff going on, where you had all these checkpoints, show me your papers. I mean, it's like the same thing, right? You have to show them your receipt, show me your papers.
Yep, show me that you paid for this.
Show me your papers, and you can cross this, border and be on your way. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's just a trip. And, it's a trip is like what we put up with. I think because it's hereditary, we don't recognize what we're doing because we just followed our parents along and did what they did and never really thought about it. And then you get several generations of people just doing the same darn thing over and over and over again, that there isn't the ability, I think, sometimes to think about it in a different way.
Exactly.
All right. Well, anyway, we're coming in. I know it always goes by so fast. So we're coming into our last, it looks like it's 52. So we're coming back into our last, like 4 minutes. Is there anything you have to yak about for 4 more minutes?
Oh, God. Yeah, I got to get me a new roto cup for my left shoulder. I got to get it fixed. It keeps popping on me. Oh, let's take a look here. Says the government of the United States is a foreign corporation with respect to the state. Well, I've always known that. And all states are foreign to one another as well. And all the Admiralty states are foreign to United States number 3, which is the Republic. It's nice to know that the Republic still exists. It's nice to know you can live in that Republic and not be harassed by the Admiralty people if you have the proper paperwork. I saw this happen once to one of my friends who had his paperwork done, but he put an apostille on it, which is a good idea, which we need to do to yours. Because once he was followed by a secret cop going down the road, and the sheriff called in up ahead, the sheriff put a roadblock up, stopped him, pulled him over. They had guns on them, on everything else. And just, let me see your ID. So he handed him his apostille documents, and the sheriff looked at it, looked at his documents, read them, waved all his men off, told them, go away. There's nothing they could do here. And the sheriff, this guy got out and just started shooting the crap with the sheriff, talking about his paperwork, who he really is, because the sheriff was really interested in finding out more about this stuff. But the sheriff was also smart enough to know that once that apostille was on there, that he couldn't argue against those legal documents. He had to end the case right there and just have a good time talking with this sovereign person. That's nice.
Yeah, that is nice. And so tell people what an apostille is. I mean, in case people don't know what an apostille is. All
right. Well, it's...
You got 2 minutes.
Okay. And an apostille is getting a notarization done, having a notarization checked by the Secretary of State that man was a notary who confirmed your documents. Then once the notary has been confirmed to be a legal notary, then the Secretary of State will then attach what is known as an apostille to your document because you applied for it. And this apostille has one purpose. It's to legalize your documents, to legalize them. If you go into a court with unlegalized documents, they can throw them right in the trash because it doesn't mean anything to them. So if you're going to be fighting court cases and you're going to be doing this or that, it'd be a good idea to have your documents apostilled. Now, there's another way to get around apostilling if they won't apostille the documents, and that is you go to the common law phase and you go down and you make a posting 3 weeks in a row on a Monday and then get proof of your posting and put that in with your paperwork. That also does the same thing. It legalizes your documents. So there's two ways of legalizing documents.
So how would you post it? Tell listeners.
Well, you just go to you don't post all your documents. That's too much. It costs you an arm and a leg, to post every word that's in your documents. You just merely state that a certain type of trust was created on this day, and the name of this trust is the all capital letter names, and that this trust is not me, and that this trust is doing business in the name of the all capital letter name within the Admiralty, and I myself is immune from all Admiralty as I am not part of that official statement.
And so it would be
person in the United States number 3. Okay, so you just write a little message like that says I live in the United States number 3. I do business in 1 and 2 through my apostilled legal documents.
And you'd post it in the classifieds.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, everybody. Thanks, Bill. See you next week, everybody. Have a great week. Bye.
Bye.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message. Welcome to Revolution Radio, where you, the listeners, are in charge. Here at Revolution Radio, we present 48 broadcast hours of news and information each and every day. Revolution Radio never sleeps. Revolution Radio is worldwide and borderless information. Revolution Radio is also commercial-free. Revolution Radio is supported 100% by you, the listeners. And that's why we appeal to you to donate and support this station and its expenses. You can support us in many available options like archive subscriptions, our seed pack selections, or even my woodworking store. And we also even have Revolution Radio's swag at the Revolution Radio Zazzle store, which you can get t-shirts, coffee cups, even a baby onesie. Or you can just plain donate to the cause. We cannot continue without your support, and your support is what helps pay the bills. So please, if you wish us to continue, please stop by our station support page and drop a dime on us. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps. Is your data safe? Do you have the necessary information to assist you in confidently living through just about any survival situation? Is survival and gardening, off-grid living, medical knowledge, or even natural or man-made EMPs on your list of personal concerns? Do you have your documents and your personal information in a safe place in your hands where you know where it is? Well, check out our preloaded EMP-proof thumb drive. Over 3 gigs of survival documents and how-tos, plus the USDA offline food preservation website, and much, much more, including a surprise bonus we just can't tell you about here. With plenty of room left over to store your most important documents. Imagine if a megavirus or a computer failure took out your bank or all the